All of creation is on a one-ticket ride to oblivion, what with the majority of those that live within its constricting confines agreeing with its demise. If awareness does not expand, as it must surely seek to do, as that is the real intent and reason for every individual, then the opposite can be in fact the case, a constriction. People can have whatever they desire in the psych realms, for the mechanism of cause and effect creation is akin to a bubble of reflection. What we set into motion through thoughts, deeds, and desires reflects back by means of effects, and we experience whatever we choose then to project. Not necessarily a bad thing, one might argue, if one were arguing from a very limited literal frame of reference, as it follows then that anything is gleanable, anything attainable. One could then, in the full understanding of this process, manifest any life they wished, and so the infinite possibility of positions is available, from a peasant to a king. This process surely must be easy to grasp and acknowledge, just through everyday experience and observation. Most teachings, and restricting though they are spiritual paths, point out this most apparent of fundamental creational happenings. Naturally, very few reference the is, however, and so naturally the controllers are happy enough to encourage the creation of spiritual practice and its propagation. They don't mind what you play with in regards to ideas, as this will keep you in creation. As long as you don't begin to create things that reference and promote the is and the universal guides. Nevertheless, regardless of what we decide or choose for ourselves, the effects must be experienced, and so creation will have us in its clutches. Boredom sets in, even for those individuals who seemingly have creation in the palms of their hands. And it seems then the generally accepted way to alleviate boredom from the position of those that rule everything is to unleash mayhem, to torture, destroy, and use creation as though it were a toilet, to effectively defecate on all individuals, just for amusement and boredom alleviating purposes. Unfortunately, this has dire consequences, for not only those defecated on, but those pulling down the pants to do so. The constricting chokehold the controllers have on creation causes then a constriction, rather than an expansion, for awareness generally. Of course, it is every individual's choice to connect with their real awareness or not, No one can realistically save or hinder another in awareness connecting terms. The decision to do so must be with each person. Although those that control creation certainly do their darnest to ensure it is made as difficult as possible for all those struggling in the matrix, it all stems from fear. The most fearful individuals seek control and subjugation rather than become aware themselves. They'd far more readily project their fears onto others and cultivate the same emotional state as they themselves harbour. Topping the list of their concerns, the controllers, that is the prospect of losing their slaves that effectively provide them with the lavish lifestyles they have come to expect and are accustomed to. The Callum god Grog himself, who sits on his throne in the mental level, maintains his position through the supporting network of reptilians and minions who maintain the slavery, restriction and literal programming of creation. Were it an ideal situation if awareness were encouraged universally and throughout creation, it still would not necessarily ensure everyone gets with the awareness connecting purpose of their real intent, because everyone must choose for themselves, and only when they are at a stage of readiness to at least take a glimpse at possibilities beyond creation will they take those first tentative steps. But at least the opportunity would be available. The knowledge and references pertaining to the is and the real guides in plain sight. Yes, it could still be ignored, and probably by the vast majority, but its presence undeniable. For the literal, self-convinced masses, were such all is pertaining information available to a great extent, it would be to them like those annoying perfume adverts, irritating in the extreme, but on every channel and advertisement board, so impossible to ignore. And even if they did ignore it, their real selves would recognise it, and into their subconsciousnesses it would go regardless, to one day blossom, instead of all the restricting information and subliminals that are crowbarred into the causal body on a daily basis. And how many individuals out there are looking for this golden opportunity to be a real person in the true reality of the all is, but have as yet failed to find it? For it is virtually impossible a thing to present, try as people may, and getting harder by the day, as new regulatory laws and creational restrictions ensure the spreading of creational liberating material be ever more suppressed and demonized, and so the references and knowledge of the is suppressed and made unavailable to a great degree, by those who would not wish it received on a grand scale. The programming of creational demise a constant, everything geared and tailored to demise and destruction, and all stemming from boredom, and the fear of losing the slave force that runs the machine of creational collapse. But what perplexes the controllers, in their oblivious, awareness-lacking arrogance, is the oversight that everything agreed upon by the vast majority of those in creation affects directly the creational simulation they are in. And since the agreement is of a destructive variety and very constricting for awareness, this too is reflected in creation, as everything decays, collapses, everything poisoned and polluted. For to look into the night sky now, one would see blackness and a scattering of stars, and assume this was always so, where in reality it was not. For once the night sky had far more stars, light and coloured brilliance. As the idea of time has gone by, as the agreements and compounding effects of ideas over millions of lifetimes of a restricting nature have continued, the reflections in creation are there to see, including the ever-growing darkness seen in the night sky, and black holes now growing in their quantity, swallowing up suns and star systems, the final tumultuous effects of all that restricting agreement demonstrated in creation, as eventually everything will be swallowed up, everything will become dark and lost, and in the final stages of an inevitable process, every individual still clinging onto creation will be crawling about in twisted, distorted bodies, in darkness, scrabbling about for whatever sustenance still survives. The concept of time being of course another restricting idea, as everything in creation is in fact choices and cause and effect that stems from the choices made, and the individual's position, circumstances, and collectively that of everyone's, especially in environmental terms, alters accordingly to these cause and effect choices made. And so, what is overlooked by the controllers is this cause and effect demise on a creational level scale. This they fail to grasp or understand, and they too will be caught in the demise and the blackness that will engulf everything eventually. My father, Peter, has had real side dreams of this nature, dreams of a blanketing blackness that sweeps over everything. He found these dreams of a particularly terrifying nature, the fear of the controllers finally manifest in the ultimate abject terror that must be the experience of all who find themselves in such a situation of darkness, at least terrifying from the personal self, as these are emotions we choose to add to a situation or experience. From a real self perspective, we would view everything objectively, adding nothing to what we perceive. The experience is simply that, something to be objectively regarded, with nothing added on top, lest we disconnect from our awareness and become the experience rather than the experiencer. From this objective place of awareness, with our real selves at the wheel, there will be nothing that can't be bared or handled, even should we find ourselves facing the blackness that engulfs all and heralds the final death knell of creation. For if we add ideas and emotion and make the experience traumatic, this we file in our subconscious, and there it will linger. We will be the effects of it, charged emotional reactions, waiting to be triggered whenever similar situations occur again, and of course ensuring we have more future lifetimes to face. And if we bring in the panicking literal personal self, drawing upon the limited palette of references it may possess, as we disconnect from our real awareness, as a result, we will deal with all situations, regardless of what they are, far less effectively. The personal self just gets in the way and muddies the waters, and our ability to draw upon the skills and abilities the real self could bring to bear. And instead of zapping attackers with fireballs and flying away on the back of a dragon, we may well run around in circles screaming and fall down a hole or something. The extent to which I have effectively dealt with unsavoury individuals and hair-raising situations depends vastly on the degree to which I keep the personal self out of it. It will be accompanying us on the real side and on the physical, but as time goes by, it receives assurances that its limited contributional input isn't generally the best course of action. It's as though you must get the personal self to trust the real self, and like trust in any relationship, that takes a few moments. But persistence will ensure that the personal self will be along for the ride, clutching the protection rail of the roller coaster with white-knuckled, gritted teeth and closed-eyed panic, but at least it will just sit there and not interject itself by jumping out of the roller coaster at the most inopportune moment. It has only to sit and wait, close its eyes if it must, and soon the ride is over, and there was nothing to worry about after all. I had a recent real-side dream too, to give added emphasis on the encroaching darkness that is flooding creation. I was in my in-between state, where I am not awake, yet not asleep, but a medium between the two, maintained by my connection with my real awareness. My personal self, with its emotions and thoughts, kept at bay, while there a great blackness seeped into my room. It flowed over everything like water, my wardrobe, which seems to be the source from which much phenomena stems from while in this between state, including lights, sounds, snake-like tap lines, and even once a purple-scaled reptilian hand. The wardrobe now was filled with this same inky blackness. How the wardrobe bulged with it, the doors threatening to burst open. At first I simply observed, not to be drawn into emotional response, as this would guarantee that not only would I not be able to deal with whatever this situation called for, as I would disconnect from my real awareness, but I'd lose the experience too. The between state that only can be maintained as I remain connected with my real awareness would be lost, and my perception of the darkness gone, as the filters of my created vehicle would rob me of the perception of my awareness. But be assured, just because I no longer would be able to see the experience, doesn't mean it isn't there, and far harder to deal with something unseen. Imagine were I unable to see those tap lines that once burst forth from my wardrobe. They would have attached, and I'd be oblivious to them. As it happened, I maintained my connection, and thus dealt with the tap lines, and prevented them from latching onto my body. So, with the darkness that wanted to share my room, I maintained my connection to my real awareness. At first, I simply observed objectively, curious as to what this phenomena might be, and what danger, if any, it posed. I had the vague notion that maybe it was something to do with the deep dark border, the void or nirvana, the crossover bridge between creation and the real universes. But with my awareness came insights and knowing. I perceived it to be a darkness, not of this border, but of malevolence. As in the vast majority of situations which are decidedly dodgy, if connected to our awareness, and if we choose not to unleash fireballs and things of this nature, generally I find the New You song is more than sufficient in dispelling the nasties, ridding the creepy real-side individuals from our midst, and eradicating any phenomena or situation that is not favourable. And so I began to sing the New You, and the darkness recoiled immediately. I was at this point completely engulfed in it, nothing in my room discernible, but the darkness receded from the golden true reality tones of the New You song. This darkness may have been a manifestation of the dark forces, an intimidatory tactic, or a touch of the darkness flooding through creation, due to the agreed-upon constriction that is causing the presence of this creational swallowing up darkness.